Can anybody tell me what first comes to mind when you think of the word voodoo? Just feel free to shout out the answers. What comes
Doll.
to mind when you hear the word voodoo?
Gypsies.
Revenge.
Kids.
Olive oil.
Alright, well, today I'm going to crush those preconceived ideas of what you think is voodoo. And basically, the first question that comes to mind is, what is voodoo? The word voodoo means God creator or great spirit. It is a life-affirming practice that encourages believers to better understand the natural processes of life and their own spiritual nature. The main purpose of voodoo is to heal the individual's relationship with themselves, with others, and ultimately with God. The people who practice it believe in the existence of one supreme God, also known as Loa. They are separate Loas who rule over the world's affairs, including love, family, work, justice, wealth, and health. Offerings are made to the appropriate Loa to ensure success in these certain areas. Some Loas prefer fruit, color, or a certain day of the week. The Loa also manifests itself through elements of nature, including wind, rain, lightning, rivers, oceans, the sky, the sun, certain animals, trees, and stones. Furthermore, every element of nature is sacred to a certain Loa. Basically, voodoo can be traced back to the beginning of the African continent, but its relevance in the Western society began in 1510 during the slave trade. Slaves being taken from the west coast of Africa to Europe and America brought with them their beliefs and regional practices. Because their owners didn't believe in the mystical qualities of their native ceremonies, they classified them as savages, unable to understand abstract concepts or spirituality. Slaves were unable to practice religion due to severe penalties and often sometimes death. Because of this, they turned to a more similar, more accepted religion known as Catholicism. They chose Catholicism because they noticed the essential similarities between their beliefs and those of Catholics. For example, how Catholics pray to different saints for specific purposes to communicate to a higher God in their favor. As a result, slaves substituted names and characteristics of the Loa with those of Catholic saints with similar characteristics. Around the year 1804, voodoo made its way into New Orleans, where it now remains a common region of voodoo worship in the U.S. Some of the practices and rituals, contrary to what many of us believe, voodoo isn't about sticking needles into voodoo dolls and or causing harm to people we dislike or sacrificing animals. The media has sensationalized voodoo in movies, books, and TV as evil and can be described as scary, spooky, and oftentimes silly. These stories about devil worship can all make for a scary story, but it's downright false. It's nothing like the voodoo practice by 6 million people around the world today. During a trip to New Orleans, tourist Joe Kissel described a typical voodoo temple. When we finally got to the temple, it was a bit anticlimactic. The building was just a converted house. The rooms were bright and cheery. There wasn't the remotest suggestion of any evil undercurrents. Then we met with the resident clergy, Priestess Miriam. In retrospect, the voodoo priestess reminds me of the Oracle in the Matrix film. Friendly, down to earth, and maybe even grandmotherly. And not what I was expecting at all. She gave a short talk and answered all our questions. Her mild manner and warm smile seemed to say, "Sorry if you were expecting animal sacrifices and gibberish. I get that a lot." Ceremony functions include healing rituals, calling to pacify the spirits, telling fortunes, invoking protections, and creating potions for anything from love to wealth spells. These ceremonies are done by the priesthood of voodoo. Priesthood can be held by a man or a woman after being initiated into the voodoo priesthood. The key items used in many of the rituals range from an eclectic array of items. The altar where the ceremony is taking place can hold anything with a symbolic meaning, such as candles, food, money, amulets, ritual jewelry, ceremonial rattles, bells, flags, drums, and sacred stones. The ceremonies consist of dancing, praying, and also the making and uses of voodoo dolls. Voodoo dolls are an important aspect of the voodoo religion. Dolls are made to fend off evils, to make wishes, and to invoke happiness, peace, and healing. Dolls can be made out of almost anything: wood, clay, metals, cloth, wax, and roots. They also include herbs, moss, or hair, whatever the spell calls for. These dolls are meant to contain the essence or power of particular spirits. Sorry, these are in black and white, but the color printer was out of order. This is a charm doll. Basically, it's to invoke happiness or fun. So when it's around you, you're like the life of the party, pretty much. This is a fertility doll, which is meant to be given to a couple or a woman who wants to conceive a child. So it kind of aids in that process. And this is a wish doll. You're supposed to write down a wish and pin it to the doll until that wish comes true. So voodoo today is regarded as the last of the old orders of the authentic New Orleans voodoo. The Voodoo Society in this day and age is opening its doors to a wider membership while still retaining its secret and elite status. New Orleans remains the center of voodoo religion in the U.S. and also has become a profitable tourist attraction.
So, Sandra, what did you think?
I thought that she had great explanations, and I learned more new stuff, like system you can practice voodoo. I didn't know that before. And about a voodoo temple, and that the voodoo dolls are for peace and healing. And like the wish doll, I actually thought it was the opposite. And well, she kind of was reading it a little too much from her notes, and that was pretty much it.
All right. There's a good example, by the way, of the problem of using an audience survey as the attention device at the start of your speech. Trying to get them to participate, they're just kind of sitting there, nobody says anything, nobody does anything, and then finally it kind of starts rolling in, and you lose a little bit of control there. So I like the idea that you have there. The problem, though, is sometimes your audience is not as willing a participant as you might want them to be, or the opposite direction, they won't stop participating, and then you lose a little bit of control. That you identified the subject well, you had a very clear statement of what your goal was. It seemed to me like you rushed through the introduction, and we were talking about the loas before I even knew what the body of the speech was. And internally, I didn't hear those signposts. I did get a sense that there was a structure that was going on, but I think you could do something to make it a little bit clearer for the audience as they are following. I thought that you did a nice job explaining a couple of things. For instance, the historical roots and the parallelism that they used with the Catholic practices of the saints. I thought that was explained nicely. I do think that you need some source citations on that. The 6 million people practicing, I didn't get a source on that, but I did get a source citation describing the visit to the temple and what was going on there. I thought that was pretty interesting. The visuals, you know what? They're a little small. The second one, the fertility doll, it was almost impossible to see from where I was. And the first question that popped in my head was, well, what's different about each of these other than their function? How do we know which one is which? Do they have, are they composed of particular Materials, for instance, are they designed in a particular way to represent, for example, like you said, the fertility or the festival kind of thing? I think I needed some more explanation on that. And because they are small and they're all black and white, they're not nearly as interesting